Welcome to the Pastors Podcast. This is Pastor Scott with Pastors Brian and Matt.
Hello.
Hey.
I started without telling them I was going to start. Was that surprising to you? Did I catch you off guard?
Shocked. And yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that was surprising.
I'm the only one having fun here this morning, guys.
I was trying to help
So
out.
What's going on?
So far. It's hard to have fun when you're so shocked.
Completely caught off guard.
Such a state of shock.
Oh, that's me.
Yeah. Normally
No.
there's a lot of pre-banter.
Surprising prankster. Oh, I wanted to try to see if we could capture the pre-banter.
Yeah, that's a problem though, because there's a reason it's normally not included in the podcast.
We can cut
It's
it.
our edgier stuff.
We can cut it right here.
Yeah, it's our edgier stuff. Brian had a lot of edgy things to say. He said, I was going to make a really lame theology joke, and then I decided that's not for our people.
Lame theology jokes are for our people?
Aren't for our people. I was going to say a joke about him saying maybe a certain theology isn't that bad, but it's like complete inside baseball. It's not.
Were you
going to
joke about the fact that Brian's a closet Presbyterian?
No, that would have worked. Maybe baptizing babies is not such a big deal.
You have any inquiries on that? Matt at cornerstonewla.org.
That's right. Are you going to get a bunch of emails now about baptizing babies?
I'm
No,
not.
but what about baby dedications?
Baby dedications.
Yeah.
Dude.
Just stepping into the mire. Yeah.
Dove into it. You dove head first.
All of that. Brian's got lots of thoughts, and he would like to discuss it with his open coffee with a pastor time. You can
Theology
email him.
night.
Theology night, coffee with a
Do you
pastor.
remember Coffee with a Pastor? We did that.
I remember the name. I'm trying to.
It was before the merge. It was at Pete's Coffee in Westwood.
Oh, yeah.
And we would come have it was like an open invitation, Coffee with a Pastor.
Yeah.
And it got interesting.
Yeah, it did.
For the one person who showed up every time. Is that who it was interesting for?
It was just an interesting spot to do that. There's not an element of doing Coffee with a Pastor at Pete's Coffee in Westwood Village that was not interesting.
That's true. Way back in the day. So when I was in college, I mean, this podcast is mostly about me anyways, but back in the day when I was in college,
You mean in general or today?
no,
Today.
in general. I know what the people are listening for. We've gotten feedback. We've taken surveys.
You're telling a story. Everybody's dying to know how the story ends.
That's good advice for you too, Scott.
I know. It was coming back. I saw it as I said it. It was coming back.
Mr. Can't finish a sentence, Mel. Brian is disgusted over there. You're just disgusted.
I'm defeated.
That's
what keeps happening.
It's my favorite.
When we do this.
It's my favorite place for you to be defeated. So when I was back in college, you and I used to go grab coffee at Pete's in Westwood, and we saw lots of stuff back in the day.
Yeah,
there were a lot of wild people that used to hang out over there. It was a very interesting time discussing postmodernism and random stuff and terrible books, and it was wonderful. You were 24 years old.
We both had lots of hair.
I was 18. Lots of hair.
Is it
bright-eyed,
problematic to
bushy-tailed.
ask like what the worst book you read in the early 2000s was?
I think for me it would be God of the Possible, which is Greg Boyd, or Brian McLaren's New Kind of Christian, which is pretty bad.
Yeah. What was the worst book?
I don't know.
I think Brian. I feel like you would have a hard time calling a book a worst book.
I didn't read any of those. I mean, I don't know. I when we were planning a church,
Only
I didn't
read
have time
good
to like
things.
read like.
Well, fair enough.
I wasn't sitting around like, what's a book that might be horrible that I should read?
No,
right
there's
now?
books that are like
what's the
people
worst
who've like
book you read
defected from
in
faith.
seminary. What was like the
worst book you read from
but
seminary?
not assigned in seminary, although it could have been assigned in seminary. But during those years,
The worst book in seminary. Oh man.
I have zero answer to this question. I don't recall. I can't remember a book I read that wasn't assigned in seminary.
During seminary.
I mean, there must have been something,
Yeah.
but I don't know.
I just
Sorry,
remember.
that
I
didn't
remember
help.
my
That's all right.
hermeneutics class
Uh-huh.
was basically all about why dispensationalism is right. So that threw me off my first semester of seminary.
Mm.
But that's not what we're here to talk about.
No, we're here to talk about you.
We might just need to start over on this one. Colmary is so
I
flustered.
say that every time,
He's
and we
so
never
flustered.
do.
He's so flustered.
I'm not so much flustered.
You are so red. You're right. You're
I'm
right.
flustered. I'm falling apart over here.
Yeah. You better be careful. You might have a diabetes flare up.
Did he just throw something? Did he just throw something? What was that?
Yeah, what was that?
Gosh.
Oh!
Brian.
Don't throw your
Man.
mic.
Just because it's not on video doesn't mean you just do whatever you want. Gosh, Brian. All right. We're here to talk about Matt, though.
Hold on a sec.
Hold on a sec.
Did you hear that?
I think if we're gonna do sound effects, we need to pipe them into the recorder.
It was in the background, though. He broke the glass way over there.
All right. All right.
Glass break
All right.
sound on YouTube. That's what I did.
All right. For the last, over the course of the last year, we've periodically spent some time doing pastors' testimonies and getting to both know our pastors and hear a little bit about their story, about how the Lord brought them to faith, led them to be a pastor. And Matt's up because we're going to force you to
Yeah.
share about something serious.
Yeah. Let's do it.
So I'm actually excited about this because I love to both trace the work of the Lord through anybody's life, but I know it's been a journey and a cool one for you. So why don't we start at the beginning? Did you grow up in the church?
Yeah, I did. I grew up in Orange County. Grew up in a Lutheran church.
Lutheran.
Shout outs to all the
That's right.
Lutherans out there.
That's right.
What's synod? That's a thing, right?
Yes. So we grew up in the ELCA.
Mm-hmm.
You too?
Yep.
Yeah.
LCA.
ELCA, which is the more
Not to be
liberal.
confused with the Missouri Synod.
The Missouri
Yeah,
Synod
I don't
is
know
more-
anything about this. I just hear Luther, like deep pocket Lutherans, like you guys growing up, talking
Yeah.
about synods. And I'm okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Synod is SYNOD, and that is just like a subset denomination. So, but the ELCA was the kind of church we grew up in. And actually, the ELCA is pretty liberal theologically, but the church I grew up in was a relatively good church in a lot of ways, gospel preaching church, and had a lot of people who loved the Lord and were faithful Bible believing Christians. And so, yeah, I grew up in a Lutheran church. Main thing with Lutherans, we eat a lot of Jell-O. That's pretty much it.
it's the main thing. That's how you know.
It's how you know. No, my parents. So my dad grew up quasi Presbyterian, like never really committed to church or Christianity as a young boy, and moved around a lot between Chicago and Arizona. My mom grew up in a Catholic church and grew up going. She went to Catholic high school and like always had experience in the Catholic church, but had really bad experiences. And it wasn't until later on in life when they moved out to California in 1980 that they started going to something that is somewhat familiar in terms of like, you know, a higher church, a little more formal in terms of its liturgy, but not the Catholic church. And so they landed at a Lutheran church. And that's how I ended up at a Lutheran church, Huntington Beach, California.
So when in the midst of that process did like your faith become your own? Was that kind of a gradual thing? Where was there a moment for you when I don't know, you kind of took ownership of it?
Yeah.
Series of moments?
Yeah, I mean, for me it's interesting. I think I always, because I grew up in the church, and you know, different people have different experiences, right? So some people have a lot more dramatic sort of coming to faith experiences. I genuinely believe that my there's a lot of God's providence and just the everyday going to church every week, participating, being confirmed, and learning scripture and those kind of things. Like, I think God used all of those things. I don't think I became a Christian until I was 16 years old, but I was familiar and always had like a sense of God in my life, I would say. A sense of the reality of God, a sense of God's morality, a sense of God's presence, a sense of God being an important part of life. But what always held me back was I was just a giant Pharisee. I was a good kid. I always followed rules. I always did the right things, and everyone was always impressed with me. That has since significantly deteriorated over time. Almost like yeah, it's gone real bad.
Because of Brian's presence in your life?
He's just like giving me a look today. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it's all the diabetes joke or what happened, but it's just normally there's just a lot of love and affection coming from his eyes. And he's just like, he's got daggers at me. Oh, hold on a sec. No, Brian, don't do that. Oh. When it repeats on its own, that's not good.
I mean, we joke, right? But like when people are impressed with you, you kind of lean into that.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, there's a sense of. Here's what I would say. I mean, when I look back on my, middle school, high school, like early high school life, like I think because I was a good kid, I followed the rules and my grades were good, and other things like that. There was a sense of not like being good with God, but not needing a savior. Like not really being in touch with the fact that I had sin or any sort of things that needed to be dealt with by God. It was like, oh yeah, God's good, but I'm pretty good and I'm a good kid and that's what I'm supposed to be. It's very moralistic. And that moralism, I think for me, is something that was kind of like my guiding principle: follow rules, do good. And that's what Christianity was about. And I completely misunderstood what the gospel was. Gospel isn't God looking at people following rules and saying, hey, yeah, you're a good person, so you're on my team. The gospel is you, a sinner, desperately in need of a savior, needing to be rescued from your sin, guilt, shame, the wrath that is deserved because of that sin. And so it wasn't until I was 16 years old, had kind of wandered off, I think, away from church, but also away from just any sort of morality that kind of comes from being a young kid. I had a lot more freedom and had a lot more of my own ability to live out whatever my heart's desire was, whether it's sexual sin or partying or other things like that. Those were things that just kind of dove headfirst into, and came to the end of myself and realized, wait a minute, all these things I had heard about about forgiveness and sin and all these things that never clicked for me before this, never were a part of my life, never were a part of my consciousness when I thought about God. All of those things were now me. I wasn't the good kid anymore. I was the bad kid. I was the kid who was lying and stealing and cheating and breaking rules. And I was the kid who was doing stupid things and breaking my own moral standard. I was no longer this conception I had of myself as the good kid who was worthy before God because of my goodness. All of that comes collapsing, and I'm left in this situation where I'm like, man, how do I deal with this new understanding of myself as sinful, broken? And that's when the gospel finally became clear to me in my head, in a way that had never been before. Came through mainly a buddy of mine who just spoke the gospel boldly into my life and reminded me of things that I had heard but never really received, and became a Christian around 16, summer before junior year of high school.
And so I want to take just a quick detour.
Yeah.
What would you say to kids that can have a similar experience as like the good kid? Or to like, you said that the clarification of just somebody speaking the gospel boldly to you was pretty helpful. But for kids, for parents, for friends of, kids that maybe even are growing up in or around our church family that kind of consider themselves the good kid.
Yeah.
Like, in light of that experience, like what would you want for them?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, for me in my life, it took me seeing my own heart, proving myself and my sinfulness in a way that was always there, but was much more subtle and hidden. I think the pride and the ego, the self-righteousness, we're always present, but we're just, hidden under good deeds and following the rules and those kinds of things. For kids who are like that, or for parents in that situation, I think one significant breakthrough for me would come from something like the story of the prodigal son, right? In the story of the prodigal son, you have one son who's wild, loose living, runs away from God runs away from his father in a very aggressive and overt way. Things that we normally think about. He's partying and doing all these other things, whatever. And we think of the story about him, right? Primarily, this is a story about this son who's done these, wasted his father's inheritance, who hates his dad, who's lived this crazy lifestyle, and he's separated from his father because of his sin. But the thing that I think was eye-opening for me was that the older son also was separated from his father. And he's separated from his father not in his wild, loose living or other things like that. He was separated from his father in his rule following. And I think the key to me that really unlocked that door was recognizing that there's more than one way to run away from God. There's more than one way to break God's rules. Breaking God's rules doesn't always look like getting drunk and partying, doing things that the world considers, whatever is considered bad in the world, or worldliness according to Christian standards. You can run away from God by trying to follow the rules and think that is why you are better than other people or why you deserve God. And so the real danger for kids who are good is, I think, not recognizing that it's just as sinful to separate yourself from God by trying to earn his favor by following rules as it is by running from him and partying and doing all these other things. And depending on the gospel, resting on the fact that you are a sinner in your nature, and you are a sinner whether it's subtle like pride, whether it's self-righteousness, whether it's some sort of ego that is more subtle in your life, a superiority, an arrogance, or any of these other things that I think are connected to self-righteousness, or some wild, loose living, whatever it is. Both of these examples are different ways to run from God and following Christianity is not about following rules. It's about loving and trusting in Christ for your forgiveness. So I don't know. It's challenging because I think there's a lot of kids who are good kids who it's going to take something to really open their eyes to see their own sinfulness. But I think it's helpful. It was helpful for me to have broadened my understanding of the categories of sinfulness, that it wasn't just the things that I normally thought about. The breaking of the rules. It's actually the following of the rules with the wrong motivation was something that can also separate you from God.
Such a good reminder. All right, B.
Yeah.
Knowing Matt's story, I mean, I got questions about like how you became pastor and stuff like that, but what have you always wanted to ask Matt that right now, since he's on tape, you can ask him?
Matt typically volunteers all the information we need. So I'm not sure I have.
Well, we're good then. That's good. I have questions for you.
I'm sure you do.
What were you thinking? What were you thinking when you first met me?
I don't remember. It was a long time ago. You were very young. I was very young. Not as young as you.
Scott keeps saying he's been pastoring for 16 years. It's actually 17 years. It's longer now. It's 2022. 2005 is when you planted the church.
The end of 2005.
It was October. You were doing prayer groups. What time did you start core group stuff?
Yeah, we were, huh? I forgot about that.
The summer. I think it was just the summer.
Just the summer?
Yeah.
All right, 16 and a half years.
I mean, I think it was this time of year when like the idea came to fruition. I mean, I think we like planted inside of a year.
Yeah, you're probably right.
I mean, it was a pretty quick. Anyways.
Yeah, I want to say also for me, I think one of the things that was really compelling, and this leads into the next part of my story, but I came to the end of my recognizing my sin, needing to hear the gospel, recognizing that Christianity isn't about following rules. It's about receiving the gift of salvation that God has given for us in Christ, the forgiveness, the love. That it's not about my work. It's about his work. That was like such a powerful moment for me, and I think a conversion experience. But on its own, I was untethered. And I don't know where that would have ended up, but I had a youth pastor who invested in me. Started coming to the youth group, and a youth pastor who just spent a lot of time, discipled me, read books together. We read horrible books together. It didn't matter, but we were reading books together and learning about God together. And so I honestly think, like, you know, and I'll be preaching on this in a couple of weeks, that Jesus gives us a command to go and make disciples of all nations. Like there's a sense in which I very possibly could have converted, and then like my faith could have stayed really shallow for a long time had not certain things happened, including the discipleship from my youth pastor, but then even from you guys when I came up to college. And so, you know, it's one of those things for me. I look back on the church and like God's sort of sovereignty over all of it, and the picture that we normally think of when we think of salvation and becoming a Christian. And to me, I'm so excited that I get to now help form disciples as a pastor, because I think that's what was so impactful for me in my life. Huge, obviously huge, beautiful, incredible conversion experience. Becoming a Christian is such a beautiful, radical, life-changing thing. But God calls us to become Christians, but then also be formed into disciples. And that was really key in those early few years with a particular youth pastor who invested in me during my junior and senior year of high school. So that was extremely impactful. And you guys are a huge part of that story too, on the next sort of handing off from that.
So, so you and Nicole knew each other in high school. You started dating in high school.
Started dating senior year of high school, yes.
So
You might have questions about that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like
I just
how?
wore just a low. I had a low cut
Are those questions
V-neck
for
shirt.
Nicole? Like,
I had
why?
a low cut V-neck shirt on one day, and she just
That was it.
it was enough.
I mean, you guys were. I mean, you were kind of told, you know, even at that point, that you were too young for this, and
Sure.
you know, things like that. I mean, I know teenagers in my house and in our church that I'm like, yeah, they're too young for this. But like, how did your relationship with Nicole shape both of your faith in that season, or how did those intersect? Like, what was that like?
So it was really interesting. So
Because I just think it's a lot younger than most of us.
yeah, and there was a lot of times when it could have gone awry. She became a Christian distinct from me. So she became a Christian between her junior and senior year of high school. And we didn't really know. I mean, we knew of each other at that point, but we didn't really know. Like, we weren't in the same friend circle or anything like that. We had some classes together, but not all of them. And her friend Michiko became a Christian junior year of the summer between junior and senior year of high school, and basically led Nicole to faith in Christ. Nicole grew up in a Catholic church. She baptized Catholic church and did catechism, and I don't think she ever completed catechism, but she her parents got divorced, a lot of family sort of stuff that happened over time. She had really invested herself in in dance, in ballet, and she worked really hard in school. And the identity, I think she really struggled with identity throughout high school, family kind of issues and other things coming up. And Michiko just explained the gospel to her. She became a Christian. Nicole became a Christian in that between junior and senior year of high school. And then senior year of high school. So I had been a Christian all throughout the junior year of high school. At that point, the senior year of high school, I became the president of the Christian club, because that's just how it goes, right? Even though I'm a brand new Christian, but senior year of high school, 0 period, calculus. Brutal. So I'm sitting in the back of the class, and I'm sitting here thinking, like,
that's a detail I don't remember. This is great.
I am sitting in the back of the class, and surrounding, like, back corner, normal spot for me, back corner, the 3 quietest kids in the school are around me. I'm like, oh, 0 period, calculate. I'm gonna fall asleep this whole year. Like, I'm gonna really struggle staying awake if I don't move seats. And there's 1 seat open. Happened to be next to Nicole up front. Of course, she's sitting up front. Nerd. And I had gotten a cross necklace from my grandma for Christmas the year before, and I was wearing that. And she had just become a Christian, but she also, her familiarity was with the Catholic Church, similar to my mom actually. And she was like, I don't know about like this weird Baptist church, that my friend goes to. But she knew I went to a church, and she knew I was the president of the Christian club, and she asked if I could come to our church one day. I was like, yeah, of course you can. And we kind of struck up a friendship that way. Now, at the time, I was dating a different girl, and Nicole started coming, and she shared her testimony, and just started coming basically for the 4 months of the fall. And my youth pastor pulled me aside. I think it was like December 2004 or so, and was like, dude, you need to break up with this other girl and date this other girl. Date Nicole.
Your youth pastor told you?
Yeah, he basically, that's what he said. He said, you need to break up with the girl you're dating and date Nicole.
Like, I knew this part, but that's a bold move.
It's a bold move.
Was the other girl in the church?
Kind of.
Is that why? Because
Not for long.
It's really worse if she's like,
he was like
4 seats down.
He was pretty charismatic, so I don't know if he would consider it,
like a word from the
a
Lord.
word from the Lord kind of thing. I don't know. Anyways,
if he did, he's pretty happy right now.
That's right.
Yeah. Anyways, that's I mean, there's something there. Yeah, but that's a whole thing. But anyways, he said that, and I kind of thought about it, and I was like, yeah, he's kind of right.
He's kind of right. Yeah.
He's kind of right. So I broke up with this other girl. Sorry about that. But and then Nicole.
I think she's okay now.
Anyways, it wasn't meant to be. It wasn't meant to be.
Yeah.
Nicole's friend Michiko and my friend Kyle, we started just kind of hanging out as like a group of friends, Christians. Like, started just like, we weren't all in the same youth group exactly, but we had a lot of friends to like classes together, and we were, we were in ASB together and other kinds of stuff like that. So we were around each other a lot, and we just started spending a lot of time together, and it was just friendship. I mean, we developed a strong friendship in that time. We knew it was senior year of high school, no idea what was going to happen college-wise. We didn't really start dating until later on in senior year, because we were like, look, like, we're enjoying time together, and it just developed as a friendship first and foremost. And then we started dating, but we also said, like, look, we just started dating. We've only been dating for a few months. We don't need to make college decisions together. Like, you don't need to make your college decision based on where I'm going to go to school, because we've only been dating a few months. It's been great. Like, praise the Lord for the gift of a healthy dating relationship that neither of us have ever had.
Mm-hmm.
God glorifying dating relationship that neither of us have ever had. So let's make those decisions independently. So we did, but we both independently got into and chose UCLA. So we were like, okay, well, I guess we'll keep things going.
Yeah.
And that's when we moved up here.
So
what, Brian? Brian's smirking over there.
I'm because that segues directly into you ending up at my apartment.
Yes.
For a prayer night. I think because Nicole emailed me.
Yeah.
And was like, hey, I don't know how you guys heard about us.
So we heard about you because my youth pastor, for all of his theological chaos, really loves Francis Chan. So we used to listen to Francis sermons together at different points. And so we would listen to, this is when, I guess podcasts, or I don't know, like online sermons would be posted. You could listen to online sermons. So I used to listen to Francis sermons, Nicole and I used to listen to Francis sermons online. And we were the first college that had Facebook. Did you know that? We were the first college year that had Facebook. I think we were the initial college Facebook for across the board.
Yeah.
So
we were because you had to. I totally forgot that you had to have an
college
EDU email address to get an account.
That's right.
Very interesting. So, anyways, that's a whole segue. But do you guys want to talk about the metaverse? It came up on our elder retreat.
And how?
We figured it out.
And how? Yeah, we got to figure it out. But we listened to Francis sermons, and there was like a college summer camp thing that I went to before we went to college. A college up in the mountains or something. I don't know, that Francis spoke at too. So we were listening to Francis sermons, and he said, and of course the ones that you guys preached, we just skipped over those because we weren't there to listen to you. But he said they were planning a church in Santa Monica, and we were like, oh, that's pretty cool because that's right here. And so we Nicole emailed, and there was prayer nights, and we were like, okay, how do we get there? So we tried to figure out the LA bus system. I think we actually missed one or two because we were like, I don't know how this bus system works. Never taken a bus before in my life. And we finally figured it out, made our way over there. And that was probably mid-September or late September, or early October even, because school starts late for UCLA, maybe late September, early October of 2005, and rolled into Brian's apartment and came to a prayer meeting, and the rest is history.
So there's so many stories.
No, the rest is not history.
There's so many stories we could tell. We could tell there.
Brian was not married. He had lots of hair.
A lot of ice cream in that apartment.
A lot of ice cream.
That prayer nights were basically subsidized by that ice cream. Like that's how
it was.
There's a lot of ice cream involvement.
So we can talk about all that, but I want to, for the sake of our time and our limited amount of time left today, I want to fast forward a little bit to how and why you became a pastor. So, you went to UCLA. The Lord was doing all sorts of things in your life, in your relationship, with Nicole, in your relationship with the Lord, growing you. But what was the process like? I mean, and it wasn't super long. It was maybe just a couple of years later where you felt led to pursue pastoral ministry or affirmed to do that.
Yeah, it was interesting. So my Lutheran church growing up, as much as it's a gospel preaching church, it had a lot of like power struggle divisions within it amongst leadership. The structure of it, the polity of it was a little bit wonky. And we had something like 7 different senior pastors within 7 years. And it was kind of a place that chewed up and spat out pastors, which was not really healthy. And so I actually was my youth pastor who eventually got pushed out of there. We were reading books on sort of the failure of the institutional church and other things like that, right? And we were like, I don't know about institutional churches and denominations and all these other things, and true Christians living out their faith on their own, doing their own thing. And so there was, coming into college, there was kind of in my mind this sense of like, oh yeah, like my faith is real and genuine, and like passionate. But I don't know exactly what it will look like to live that out, but I can't imagine it's going to be connected to the institutional church. Our connection with you guys was like, this is like a church plant. It's like barely a church, like it's like, it's something totally different. It's basically like a small group of random people. And I think over time, there was just a lot of discipleship that happened over the next 2 years, especially. And then in that process, there was a trip I went on. My youth pastor the youth pastor guy moved over to a big church and was like the global missions director guy. And so he took me on a trip. We actually went to Uganda and got to meet Pastor Peter and a lot of those guys, got to see the local church functioning there, and then seeing Shoreline functioning the way that it was. It kind of blew my mind because I was always under the impression that institutional church, whatever, the local church was just messed up. Like it's just a mess, and is probably something that could be taken or leaving.
I like that.
Taken or left. And I really didn't have a sense of like calling to be a part of that until I saw local churches living out these commands from the New Testament in a healthy way. And I was like, wait a minute. Maybe there's something here that I was missing about God's design. And so over a couple of years, I basically fell in love with the local church, fell in love with the possibilities of the local church. Having grown up in a church that was very broken and very messed up in terms of power struggles and all these other things, I got to see both here and abroad this unique reality of what happens when the local church, when people love Jesus and genuinely love each other. And it changed my perspective. And I said, that's something I want to be a part of for a long period of time. And so in that process as well, my father-in-law told me that in order to marry Nicole, I had to finish college. And so I finished college as quickly as I could and then jumped into seminary right away after that, thanks to you guys.
It's really interesting. I'm not even sure I fully appreciated just how like how big of a shift that was.
Yeah.
For you, like in that time. I would also love for you to explain. I know we're kind of a little bit limited on time, but I would love to hear you explain like what that process was through kind of that decision and calling, and then coming out of college, you essentially made the decision to be a non-vocational pastor.
Yeah.
And I just think that was an interesting piece that I think it's easy looking back now for it just to be like, oh yeah, you became a pastor because that's what you studied to do, and that was kind of the plan all along. But it wasn't in a lot of ways.
No, it wasn't. So I came back. I remember when I distinctly felt like called to pastoral ministry. I remember sitting down with Brian for coffee and said, Brian, I think I'm like called to ministry. And he was like, everyone's called to ministry. I was like, okay. That sucked. I was like, yeah, I mean, like, I think
Do you remember this conversation?
No.
Do you want to know why?
Sure.
Because he had it with me.
Is that
No. I think I had it with you also. Okay. I remember where I was. I remember exactly where I was. It was that little random coffee shop over on off of Santa Monica and that little side street that comes out like an angle. I forget what it is. There used to be like this coffee shop there.
That's true. I'm thinking of Overland and...
Yes, you are.
Overland and Washington.
Yes, you are. Which I remember that.
That was a different conversation.
It was a different conversation. It was Rochester.
Oh, it was the weird siphon coffee place?
Yes, it was a weird siphon.
Yeah, it's
coffee.
gone now. It was actually
gone.
like Sports Videos 4 or whatever. That
Yeah.
like sold like cassette tapes about sports.
No, I remember sitting out there exactly there.
So
and
Brian
saying,
told
like,
you everyone's called
the ministry,
Why-
so who
why-
cares?
Yeah,
like basically,
exactly. Why is
you're,
it special?
this
Yeah.
passionate calling you feel doesn't matter.
It's 3D chess. I just knew
yeah.
I had to put up a barrier so the stubbornness would push through and like really propel him forward into ministry.
What I was trying to say is like, I think I want to go to seminary, and I think I want to like maybe move towards vocational pastoral ministry. And you were kind of like, well, being a pastor doesn't mean you're vocational, yada yada. And everyone's doing ministry. You're supposed to do ministry regardless. So I eventually got there like 6 years later. But yeah, that was great. And similar conversations with you. So yeah, coming out of college, it was like, okay, so go to seminary. It's a church plan. I don't know. I don't know what we're gonna do. Like, but basically, like we're during seminary. Nicole was working at UCLA and in the neuroscience department and kind of supporting the family. We had gotten married. Basically, my father-in-law said you have to be graduated from college before you get married. So I graduated as quickly as I could, and proposed a week later. We got married 8 months after that. I was already in seminary a couple semesters. When we got married, we were barely 21. Got engaged at 20. Married 1 month after Nicole's 21st birthday. We were babies. And then got pregnant with Owen basically 7 months into marriage. So we had a kid coming along the way, and I had been in seminary for 3 semesters, but basically stopped and said, well, Nicole's going to be pregnant and I need to get a job. So I had some experience with substitute teaching and did some long-term substitute teaching for middle school math. Always been strong in math and done a lot of math tutoring and different things like that. And so got connected with a math computer program, ST Math, where I guess everyone probably knows now after the pandemic. Everyone probably used it. All the kids around the country, but it's basically I was started doing trainings for teachers on ST Math just to support the family, and worked for it's called Mind Research Institute, and it was a way for us to stay in LA and continue to invest and grow ministry wise. And it basically was turning into a career that would support me bivocationally and support the family bivocationally and stay in LA that direction. So that was a shift for me too, because I came in and expected, vocational ministry is what I'm going to seminary for, but seminary had not been completed, and I was still doing a lot of ministry. In college I was doing homeless ministry and still continue to do a lot of that there. I do a lot of teaching, a lot of other investment on a variety of sides, but was kind of expecting to probably be bivocational for the rest of life. Continuing to work for Mind Research Institute, and God had other plans.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting because even when I think about it, you could have just kind of gone all in a seminary, figured out a way to make it work, and then gotten a job tried to get a job somewhere as a pastor. But there was also it seemed like a piece of that where you made the choice and felt called to stay here. Yeah, kind of in a sense, whatever it took.
Yeah, kind of. That's how it was. It was I'm being trained here for ministry. I don't want to do that somewhere else. I don't feel called to be some different place. Like I don't, and in the midst of that, honestly, because of like my youth pastor connection, like there were like a variety of different job offers and other things like that. But I mean, I was so desired. It was just like there's like one job offer somewhere. But I mean, there was outs is what I would say. There was outs either with family business or outs with other ministry opportunities that could have come. But Nicole and I have just, I think, continually over time felt this distinct impression, and I believe it's God-given, but I don't want to say like God spoke to me or something. I just believe a God-given burden and impression in our hearts that we should be in LA. We should be continuing to invest in Shoreline, continuing to invest in this place, continuing to get ministry opportunity. I felt so blessed because I knew a lot of guys in seminary who were studying and weren't getting a lot of opportunities for ministry. They were fighting to get to teach a Bible study once a month or something in different contexts. And for me, I was leading small groups and teaching classes and doing all these other things. You guys were giving me so many opportunities to preach and other things like that. Like, why would I run away from a great training ground opportunity? There's things to figure out on the logistics of supporting the family financially, but we wanted to be here, and we believe that God wanted us here. And so, we basically made the choice to say, we'll stay here no matter what. We'll make it work, and expected to do that long term.
Yeah.
And then an opportunity came up to come on full time here.
Well, when Kevin moved to Guam.
And Pastor Kevin moved to Guam, and a family ministry pastor opportunity came up, and I remember it was a hard conversation with my boss at my company because we were basically expecting to be around long term.
Yeah.
And it was a ministry. It was an opportunity there to minister to people and serve in a different secular context. So there was wrestling that came with that. I had been like, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to stay bivocational for the rest of life. And then God kind of twisted that and said, you know what? Here's an opportunity to full-time be on staff at the church. And that was a huge transition for us as well.
Well, we could do this for hours.
Bunch of kids along the way too.
That's right.
Bunch of other stuff.
Yeah. We could. I mean, what? Anything we're missing? B?
Early on, by the way, just to give you a sense of like what discipleship looked like early on, it was like before Brian, it must have been finals week of 2005 or maybe like winter 2006. And we were at a prayer night. It was a Thursday night. I had like 2 finals that next day, and Brian, with his diabetes, had stepped in some poison oak or something like that.
This is yeah. And Chrissy,
not married to Brian,
not married, not
dating.
Just looked at like below the knee of one foot. I'd spoken on some retreat, and I guess on a hike, I had touched some poison ivy, and so like any, I would say, normal human being, I scratched it like crazy. And so my lower leg like kind of swelled up, and Chrissy on a prayer night looked at it and was like, you need to go to the hospital. Like one calf can't be twice the size of the other calf, and that's normal and okay. And so Matt is like, I'll go with you. Like, okay. So we went to that weird
St. John's.
St. John, but it was like a St. John's offshoot.
Yeah,
it was like a pop-up hospital.
Yeah, it was a pop-up.
And there's a
taco truck and hospital.
There were very many. One of the restrooms overflow while we were there. So in like the room, like water starts seeping under the door.
Yeah,
they moved us around a few different places.
Yeah, there was
there for like
random
5 hours.
Bone saw in there, and like you had, like we're holding it up and playing with it.
Yeah, there was like why are there really significant medical instruments just right in this room for us to just hang out with?
Probably 2:30 in the morning when we got back.
Finals week?
Yeah, I had 2 finals the next
day. And can I tell you something? Matt was excited to be there the entire time. Both very supportive of me just as a person, and also just enjoying the ride.
Yeah.
So
I have enjoyed the ride.
Seems like a good way to characterize the whole thing.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts for the people, Matt?
I mean, I got lots of thoughts.
All right. Well,
I got lots of thoughts.
Maybe I shouldn't ask.
I think what I think is interesting is in the midst of life, you don't have the whole story, right?
Yeah.
And you see like a portion, or you have ideas of what might be going one way or the other. Like I could not have predicted 95% of the things that happened, whether like how I came to faith or meeting Nicole or college or meeting you guys or coming on staff, being bivocational, all of the things. Like I could not have predicted the timing of it. None of it would have been what I would have done. The way it all happened, none of it would have been what I would have done, and wouldn't trade it for the world. So
it's a sweet reminder. It's glory to God for the way that he just directs that.
And that's true, even though yesterday you just brutally made fun of me in front of the whole church during a God's activity, saying my jokes are terrible.
So when a pastor gets on stage
Yeah.
and says, we went on an elder retreat
Yeah.
and we worked on a bunch of things and our jokes, and jokes, and that's all he says, and you take that as directed at you, and apparently you think the congregation did as well, I don't think that's on him.
It's on him because he said, no, number one, he said, we've all like incredible character. Like these men have incredible character, but terrible jokes or something like that. And he said, and I'm not looking at anyone in particular, as he looked and stared directly at me, made eye contact with me. And he's like, yeah, I'm looking at you. It's what the next sentence was. So I don't know.
I was in the back. Maybe I missed that.
For the record, the first eye contact was inadvertent. You know, you're just like,
Yeah.
But as it came out and the timing corresponded with me seeing him, like I couldn't look away. That was the problem.
Yeah.
It was good comedic timing, whatever happened.
Whatever happened. I'm just saying I've enjoyed the ride. Even the bumpy parts.
And we have to. All right. Thank you guys. We'll call it there. Thanks for listening. Thanks, Matt, for sharing this bits of your story. It's sweet to remember and sweet to see how Lord's worked through it all. So. And thank you all for listening. We love you, and we'll see you on Sunday.